let's start with the IPL then.
Mm-hmm.
How did it become such a global phenomenon, and how did marketing help to get it to that level?
Well, the IPL is more than just a league. And I think from its conception, sort of 15, 16 years ago, it was clear that this wasn't just about creating a tournament, an event. It was actually re-engineering, recalibrating the game of cricket, packaging it closely with entertainment, packaging it closely with Bollywood as well, which was crucial at the time, and creating effectively a new product. Taking inspiration from leagues in the past and leagues from other sports, absolutely. There's no coincidence that it's called the Indian Premier League. They definitely looked at the Premier League at the time, as in the Football Premier League, the English Premier League.
Yeah, now they call it the EPL, don't they?
EPL, it was the BPL.
Premier League's no longer the Premier League, it's the EPL in India.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. They took inspiration from that, but actually the magic, I think, of the IPL is that it wasn't a copy and paste job. They took what they were seeing in the Premier League, they took those principles, they looked at the NFL, they looked at other leagues, but they applied it to the Indian market. And I use a term, I call it masala Coke marketing. I don't know if you've been to India lots of times, but I don't know if you've ever had a masala Coke.
I think I might have done, yeah.
So Coca-Cola is a product that sells all over the world, right? But in India, they had to change it a little bit. So they created this drink called the masala Coke, and you go to the milkshake bars and they'll give you a masala Coke and they'll put masala in it, they'll put lemon in it, they'll put chili, they'll change it for the Indian palate. And I think that's exactly what they did with the IPL. They said, right, how can we make this work for the Indian audiences? What are we doing to actually localize this and make this really connect with the Indian audiences? And what they've done is hugely successful. You know, whether that's having the Bollywood star ownership and actor model, which was, 15, 16 years before people were talking about Ryan Reynolds at Wrexham and all these other kind of stories that we now see in sport, the importance of celebrities and icons and people who know how to tell stories actually invested in the franchises was really, really key to their growth, right? And then how did they also create tribes and teams, and how did they integrate entertainment and make it work for the Indian palate? I think the whole thing has been a masterclass.
Yeah, well, that's a key thing, isn't it? When you talk about creating the tribes, and that was my concern with the IPL when it started, was how are you going to create this tribalism that makes sport tick, basically? If you look at the Premier League football, it's all about the fan bases and the rivalries that you get. So how have the IPL managed to create that tribalism so quickly?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because as you say, in the UK, fandom is deeply embedded in English football culture. Fandom goes back generations and generations, and you follow a club. You don't choose a club like you choose a music artist that you like. It's connection with your family or an experience you've had when you're younger, or through participating, or the area you grew up, right? So what they had to do was work pretty hard in India to really build this, and they built it around the fans. They built it with an understanding of fan culture. So if you look at, for example, the Chennai Super Kings, for example, they are deeply embedded in Tamil culture and the Tamil identity, and they don't shy away from that. Similarly, Mumbai Indians, and when they launched Mumbai Indians, they put the icon of global cricket, Sachin Tendulkar, at the heart of it, but he's also an icon of Mumbai, right?
Yeah.
And even with the Punjab Super Kings, they aligned really closely to local talent. They knew this was going to be a league where they would get the best talent from around the world. Chris Gayle, AB de Villiers, etc., have all helped in that growth. But central to it all has been an understanding of local culture, local customs, local traditions, all in that masala of music, culture, stardom, all of those things together. And you look at it now and you think they were ahead of their time, really.
Absolutely. And I guess a part of that was targeting the younger audience as well.
Mm-hmm.
When we think of cricket here, and they're desperately trying to get a younger audience, aren't they? We see it with the 100, which we'll talk about in a minute. First of all, is there a younger audience for cricket in India than there is here?
Well, there's a much bigger audience for cricket in India as there is here. I mean, you've got a nation of more than 1 billion people, so the scale is completely incomparable. And this applies to any sporting rights holder, any sporting body, any sport. engaging Gen Z is absolutely key to the future, to growth, because Gen Z actually is not just the future. They're also your existing fans. Gen Z goes up to, I think, 26, 27 years old. And so that's your first native digital generation. So the fact that the IPL, you have a boundary scored every 3 or 4 minutes, and the fact that you have a wicket taken every 12 to 15 minutes, it is optimized for shorter attention spans, right? It is short form cricket. And that is what actually works for a digitally native generation. So it's not as simple to say younger people today have shorter attention spans. That's not true. They will engage with content for a long amount of time. However, that digitally native generation are used to the tick of dopamine that you get from watching sporting events, and therefore sport has to completely change to adapt to that generation. And I think the IPL is a real great example of that.
So what did they do specifically to target Gen Z then? I'm talking in terms of social media campaigns and that sort of thing, because it's funny when you watch the 100 trying to do the same thing, and at times you think, well, they're floundering a little bit. Are they getting this right?
Yeah.
That's what its detractors would say. In some ways they do get it right. I think it is working in some ways, but it's not quite had the cut through that the IPL has.
It hasn't. And I think I just like the IPL didn't copy and paste from the Premier League, or the EPL as we're calling it today. I don't think the 100 should be copying pasting from the IPL. Okay, so it's created a slightly shorter format. That's great. Obviously, there's discussion and debate around that. I think there's some very smart things at play in terms of the way the score is portrayed, and the way that it's recalibrated cricket a little bit for younger audiences. But again, what I don't see from the 100 at the moment is an understanding of culture in this country and the cricketing audience in this country. And I think there's a really key reason behind that. I think we're in transition in this country between a very traditional county-focused cricket audience, and perhaps not so diverse and perhaps not so young, to a new emerging generation, which is much more diverse. And this includes, South Asians in this country who have the same propensity and receptivity towards brands as fans do in India. And I think there needs to be an understanding that you're serving diverse communities. And I think the ECB, it's something that the ECB are trying to adapt to, but it's not something that's coming very naturally. And maybe that's because there is a need for more diversity within the decision making that goes on there as well.
Is it not very hard to cater for both, though? How do you cater for both of those audiences at the same time? Because they're quite different.
Well, I think with the 100, they're not going after the
the old duffers,
the old cricket badgers, and we love them and they have their place, but they're not interested in the 100. I mean, I've got a friend who calls the 100 the 16.4. He refuses to acknowledge that it's the 100.
I've got a few friends who just will never like it. To be honest,
yeah,
I'm not one of those. I think it's it's going vaguely in the right direction. Personally, I wouldn't have made it 100 balls. I think it could have been a T20, but. Yep. I haven't got a general problem with the 100, but a lot of people, they just will never like it. So I guess those people you forget about. You're not targeting them.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think, when we look at fans, we look at 3 areas. So we categorize them into 3 areas, right? So number 1 is receptive fans. So they're going to be receptive to changes. They're going to be receptive to what sponsors bring into sport. And if you look in India, the receptive fans are about 60-70%, right? It's really, really highly receptive. And if you look at cricket fans in the UK, it's about 25%.
Really?
Yeah, because we're a much more mature sponsorship audience. We're a bit more fatigued by brands, and perhaps we're a little bit more fussy, if you like, about brands invading our sports and these traditions, right? We're a bit more traditional. Whereas you watch the IPL and you will see an SUV by the side of the pitch, and everyone's perfectly happy with the SUV being there, right?
Yeah, they want the ball to smash through the windscreen, don't they?
Exactly. And then the other category we have is we call them selectives. So, they are going to be receptive, but they want to know what a brand is bringing to that sport. And then that final one is non-receptives, and you're never going to get them. There's no point in trying to target them. They're interested in the sport, but they're not going to necessarily engage in what a partner is doing, what a brand is doing. And they're certainly not going to engage in a sport being recalibrated for the 100. So there's no point in chasing that audience. I like the 100. I've taken my kids to matches, and I can see the appeal of it for younger audiences. So from a family point of view, I think it's a fantastic product, but there is work to do.